Hello?
Spiridon almost leapt off the bed as someone beat hard on the door.
May I come in?
Asked a young female voice.
What?
He rubbed his face, trying to make the words register.
Yeah.
The light moulded around a small figure in the doorway that gasped and looked away.
Oh, You're not fully dressed.
Spiridon glanced down at his bare, tattooed torso, the girl stealing a glimpse too. He pulled on his faded crimson jumper and staggered out of bed. He stared down at her, unsure what to say.
Hello.
He tried.
Hello.
She knotted her fingers around the door handle, continuing to stare at Spiridon, and it embarrassed him. He peered behind her into the corridor, but there was no one else from what he could see. And yet, he could hear a distant gauze of talk.
I'm here to show you around,
She finally explained, and smiled at him.
I'm Tiz. What's your name? Spiridon, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How old are you, Spiri?
I'm 18. And you?
I'm 11 and a half.
Tiz announced, hands on her hips. Spiridon traced his exposed collarbone with a finger and tilted his head to the side, not sure what to make of her.
Ah, that's nice. So, you're here to show me around, Tiz?
Would you prefer me to call you Daisy? That's what the others call you.
No. My first name is fine.
All right, then. Are you hungry? I've been told to get you some food.
Spiridon began tracing his lip, one arm folded over his chest, and smiled.
Sure. That'd be nice.
He followed Tiz down the hall and to a metal elevator, helping her pull the grill across before they descended into what Tiz explained was the Froxen hive. Spiridon was quite tall and lithe compared to most men his age, and looking down at Tiz, who came up to his stomach, he felt like a giant. She was bony, her hair so brown it could have been black, and cropped as short as a boy's. Her eyes were brown too, and her bodysuit a faded woolen orange, clashing against red shorts and chunky boots, goggles dangling around her neck. A bag hung from her hip, and a knife on the other side.
You know you're in Froxen Underground, right?
Tiz checked, licking the tip of her finger and then tapping it to her nose.
Yes?
Top buzz. Well, you entered from Sector 2. That's easy to remember because it's beneath the train tracks. 2. Same first letter as train, get it?
Spiridon smiled, tracing his collarbone again, and waited for her to keep talking.
Aha.
Sector 2 is where Froxen Blue hang out. You were there last night. Cedric keeps his radios up there. You know Cedric, right?
By sight?
Yeah, and just below that room is the sleeping quarters for the Blue Boys. That's where you slept.
Tiz, does Cedric run Froxen Underground by himself?
All by himself? Nah. All the Blue Boys from Froxen Blue manage Froxen Underground. And then you've got your subdivisions, but they're not important. It's the Blue Boys that keep it all running around here.
So the Blue Boys live in Sector 2, eh?
Yup, that's it. We're heading down. Actually underground now. Sector 2 is the only sector above ground, but that's because it's built into the train track supports. Crazy, huh?
Spiridon felt a shiver chase down his back, and he agreed, feeling safe and endangered all at once. Tiz was staring at him again.
What?
Nothing.
She grinned and looked away, licking her finger and tapping her nose. Spiridon skewed his mouth to the side and watched her a moment, wondering what she was plotting, before he shook his head and smiled.
So who's your father?
Remus. Do you know him? Remus Lance is his full name. He's one of the Blue Boys. Ring any bells?
Nope, sorry. Too few bells are ringing for me to recognize it. What about your mother? Is she a blue, boy?
The colour in her face drained, and Spiridon felt his shoulders prickle. Tiz chewed on her lip and gazed off to a corner behind his head, clicking her fingers.
She's dead. Died 4 years ago. But not to worry.
They did not speak again, his eyes closing now and then, until the elevator came to a shuddering stop. Spiridon grabbed hold of the sides to support himself, feeling faint at the amount it shook.
Bloody hell, are you sure this thing is safe?
He was not a person that was easily dishevelled, but he was good at adapting to the environment. Unfazed by random threats to his safety, but it was becoming too much to handle of late. The smallest things were throwing him off balance. Tiz laughed at him and began tugging back the door.
Come on, it's fine.
Spiridon followed her out into what looked like an old shopping centre. Mannequins stood in the windows, some draped with ropey clothing, and the original shop signs had been painted over. It appeared that the shops had become people's residences, and a few letters beneath the claiming name said if they sold wares. Spiridon felt enraptured by the sights and smells surrounding him as Tiz led the way into what he presumed was the centre of them all. Makeshift stalls that looked like they could crumble at any minute crammed themselves together, coloured jam jars hanging from the homemade roofs of these stalls. It was as if a million fairies were bobbing around the hall, the jars clinking together against the roaring chatter. Spiridon tipped his head back and saw 2 more levels circled above, groups of people peering over the banisters.
It's market day,
Tiz cried, pulling on his sleeve to make him walk.
We have market every Thursday and Monday, though you usually see the same things.
He squeezed past the gathered people, weaving from stall to curious stall with barely a chance to observe them, trying to keep an eye on Tiz. She was small and agile in this place, darting between people's legs, slinking between available gaps, and waving to random strangers. Only when he saw a dubious-looking food stall did Spiridon realise how hungry he was. He stopped a moment to watch the man who was heaping out a form of stew and biscuits to customers. Others took loaves of bread that were a little bigger than Spiridon's hands, while some scooped tea and water into their flasks. He turned his attention behind him and saw someone selling an array of glittering bits of broken metal and gadgets, a sign saying, "Broken Thingamajigs," over the main table. A pocket watch caught his eye, the face cracked and glass splintered. As he made towards it, Spiridon came to his senses and carried on in pursuit of Tiz. A swell of panic enveloped him when he realised he'd lost her. Pushing forward, staring at the faces of people he passed, Spiridon found himself knocked to the side and he staggered, finding his balance just before he crashed into a small collection of glass figurines. He straightened and sighed with relief.
Sorry.
He looked for the stall owner and his mouth parted in disbelief. Spiridon stared at an old woman who sat surrounded by boxes, glass balls, cards, hanging banners and, of course, millions of glowing jam jars. Her face was crusted black, the place for her eyes unidentifiable, and her back was hunched over as if the ragged dress she wore was too heavy. Her hair was long and white, strands sticking to her cracked lips.
Let me read your future. I can see the things you've never believed in. Let me show you the future. Will your child be a boy or girl? Come, let me tell you.
Spiridon stared transfixed at the blind woman, her black-encrusted features horrifying and fascinating. She moved as though incredibly pained and began lifting her head as if to look at him. Spiridon took a step back, bumping into someone as the people surged on by.
Hey, Spiridon!
His attention snapped towards the sound of Tiz's voice, and in a moment she appeared.
What are you doing? Come on, stay with me, okay?
Tiz glanced at the blind woman and shuddered as she turned to look at her. Darting forward, Tiz grabbed Spiridon's hand and pulled them on. It felt rude to ask why that woman had been in such a state, so he didn't mention her again.